recording?
Yes, I did. Already did.
Mhm.
And let me do the live on the YouTube also. No, later I will post it. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Um, Welcome to Council for Ayurveda Research Journal Club. My name is Vaidya Gupta, and today's our speaker is Dr. Pratibha Shah. Dr. Pratibha Shah, BMS MD, MPH, is an internationally renowned Ayurveda expert, intensely trained in traditional health science as well as public health. And Dr. Pratibha Shah distills Eastern wisdom with an understanding of Western principle for the best care of her clients. Her pioneering initiatives in the field of Ayurveda have brought her to attention at the White House, the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as at the Consulate General of India, New York. With more than 30 years of clinical practice, she is one of the few holistic practitioners leading the efforts of true integration focused on client centric wholesome care. She has been a trailblazer and eminent ambassador of Ayurveda in the West, teaching, practicing, and promoting Ayurveda, while also working tirelessly on building bridges with mainstream medicine practitioners as well as the institutes. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Pratibha Shah for today's presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Meenakshi, and welcome everybody. And I'm also delighted to share that, you know, I founded Council for Ayurveda Research about 8 years ago. And it's come a long way, and we are a team now. Dr. Vandana Paranwal and Dr. Meenakshi Gupta, we are in the board of directors. And Journal Club meetings is another initiative we started maybe 2 years ago. And now more consistently, we have been holding monthly meetings. So I'm really, really happy that this activity that is a very integral part of any research organization is being consistently held in USA as well as in our sister chapter in India through our sister chapter in India, which is Ayurveda Anusandhana Abhiyan Foundation. So welcome to the April Journal Club meeting. I finally get my turn to present. I have been keeping myself in the buffer for a very long time, but finally my turn has come. So I have, accepted with happiness, and I'm excited to share with all of you a very interesting case study, which has been actually reported very, very recently, and it is under pre-publication. It is not even published right now. So absolutely fresh, I would say, in the publications that are coming out in the field of COVID-19. So this is a cursory disclaimer that this presentation is meant for educational purposes only. None of the information in this presentation is meant to replace a medical advice. Information presented in the slides is not verified or approved by the FDA or any such agency. And I, as a presenter, make no claim, promise, or guarantee of any kind regarding the information presented here. And expressly, I disclaim liability of any kind. So with that disclaimer, I'm going to move on to, I'll just because I'm presenting today, I thought I'll just include a slide on the purpose of Journal Club. A journal club is an educational meeting in which a group of individuals discuss published articles to keep themselves abreast of new knowledge, promoting in them the awareness of current research findings, teaching them to critique. I think the critique part is what I would like to emphasize and spotlight, and appraise research and encourage them to utilize the research in evidence-based practice of the specialty, which is Ayurveda in our case. And this aligns perfectly with the mission and vision of Council for Ayurveda Research. And you can learn more about our work at our website, www.ayurvedaresearchusa, all one word, .org, www.ayurvedaresearchusa.org. This is what it looks like, and you can explore and also consider joining as a professional member, which is very, very nominal. We just want to get more and more professionals in the group so that we can work on projects, more projects together. So with that, I'm going to get started. The presentation is in the standard IMRAD format, introduction, methods, results, discussion. And I have, for today's presentation, I have chosen a different breakup of the IMRAD format, which looks like this. I'm going to start with an introduction section, which is going to have the title slide containing the paper's title, journal, publication year, and authors, reasons why I chose the paper, the background information necessary to understand the study, and then I'm going to summarize the paper under these headings as mentioned here. And then I'm going to assess the paper based on or under these headings: significance or relevance of the findings, strengths of the paper, weaknesses of the paper, and overall critique. And then I'm going to conclude with the last section, which is the discussion points. So this is the title slide. The title of the study is Ayurveda Co-Interventions Have Supported Complete Recovery in Severe COVID-19 Infection with a Chest Severity Score of 18 on 25, a case report. The author is Dr. Sanjeev Rastogi, Department of Kaya Chikitsa, State Ayurvedic College and Hospital, Lucknow. The site of the study is undisclosed, and I did reach out to the author because I am connected with him professionally. And he mentioned that for purpose of privacy and because the patient was not comfortable, the site of the study cannot be disclosed. But there are certain indications to at least some at least the city of the intervention is mentioned in the paper, and some indication to the group of hospitals under which this hospital may belong. The journal where this particular case report is under pre-publication is the Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine, popularly known as JAIM, and the year of publication will obviously be 2021. The reasons I chose this paper, because I felt it was very well written. More than that, it is timely, it is relevant, immediately useful, and considering, so this paper started in, I think he has submitted this paper, Dr. Rastogi, in February. At that time, the current acute wave of COVID cases had not yet started in India. So at that time, the author may not have known how immediately useful it's going to be, but because of that, the immediate sort of relevance of it has increased. Also, I thought this kind of case reports may motivate and lead to more integrative efforts in the management of COVID-19 in all the phases, in the preventative phase, in the management phase of mild to severe COVID, and also post-COVID management, which we are calling the post-COVID group is being called the long haulers. So in that group as well, which is a steadily growing group and significant health issues, lingering health issues, and new ones developing much after the COVID-19 negative results have been obtained. And I felt this was a strong example of a good case report, although I must admit that I initially started with a very high impression, very, I would say, very much impressed by the case study, but case report. But as I started to prepare to present, I started yesterday, and I realized there are some significant weaknesses in the case report, which I will be reporting very objectively, and my job is going to be to bring attention and highlight to those areas because, in my opinion, they bring down the degree of robustness of this case report. And that is why I would like to highlight them. And I hope that if Dr. Rastogi still has a chance to get those relevant informations, which are bringing down the robustness of this case report and what it may mean in terms of its application to such future integrative efforts. So, just to establish the timeliness of it, I have just put together some data points. So, in September 2020, with nearly 100,000 new coronavirus cases a day, India was on the track to overtake United States to become the country with the highest reported COVID-19 caseload in the world. Hospitals were full, and the Indian economy had nosedived into an unprecedented recession. But 4 months later, India's coronavirus numbers plummeted. On January 26, 2021, as recent as just 3 months ago, the country's health ministry confirmed a record low of about 9,100 new daily cases. And in Georgetown University, Jishnu Das observed that it's not that India is not testing properly, or there is underreporting, but the numbers were rising, and now suddenly it's vanished. I mean, this is quote. I mean, hospitalized utilization has gone down. Every indicator says the numbers are down. End quote. So basically, there was, the whole medical fraternity were baffled that what is it that is working in favor of the Indians in the context of COVID-19. How are the numbers plummeting so rapidly and so suddenly? Scientists say it's a mystery. They are probing why India's coronavirus. This is reported from a paper from npr.org actually. They are probing why India's coronavirus numbers have declined so dramatically and so suddenly in September and October months before any vaccinations have begun. So they are trying to figure out what Indians may be doing right and how to mimic that in other countries that are still suffering. So this was the context. And from here, within a span of roughly 2 months, we went to what we are experiencing today as the fourth wave of COVID-19. And Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, who is the Delhi chief minister, says that it is more dangerous than the previous ones. And according to data available with him, 65% of patients infected this time are below 45 years, which is really, really worrisome. It's a younger population. The sudden spike in COVID-19 cases in Delhi over the last few days and across the country has baffled medical experts. So the plummeting had baffled, and now this sudden acute rise in the COVID cases is again baffling the experts. And there are all kinds of opinions floating in the news that it could be a new strain, it could be a new variant, but nobody is sure at this point. And the mortality rate, although seems steady, but there are many questions about that too. Some doctors said that the reason behind a large number of people contracting the infection this year could be that a virus has mutated and the current strain is more infectious. Suranjit Chatterjee, a senior consultant at Apollo Hospitals, a COVID-19 survivor himself, said, and this is so bleak and grim, said doctors in their 40s and 50s and other young healthcare workers, say in their 30s, are getting infected in the current wave, despite most of them having taken both doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. This is important to note. So I'm just trying to establish the relevance and the timeliness of this case report. And this, to me, kind of nails the grim situation in India. And this is reported by Al Jazeera. In the diamond hub of Surat, Gujarat's second largest city, sailors Kurukshetra crematorium and a second crematorium known as Zumra have cremated more than 100 bodies a day under COVID-19 protocols over the last week, far in excess of the city's official daily coronavirus death toll of approximately 25, according to the interviews with workers. So, 25 reported COVID deaths versus 100 bodies being cremated in one crematorium alone. And of course, not all 100 would have died of COVID 19, but definitely 25 seems a low number. Prashant Kabrawala, a trustee of Narayan Trust, which manages a third city crematorium called Ashwini Kumar, declined to provide the number of bodies received under the virus protocols, but said cremations there had tripled in recent weeks, tripled. I have been regularly going to the crematorium since 1987 and been involved in its day to day functioning since 2005, but I haven't seen so many dead bodies coming from cremation for cremation in all these years. In quote, even during an outbreak of bubonic plague in 1994 and floods in 2006. And this last line is very telling. The iron frames inside another crematorium in Surat melted because there was no time to let the furnaces cool. So I think this slide really, really captures the grim situation in India. And in terms of numbers and statistics, you can see India is still being reported to have a mortality rate, low mortality rate comparatively, of 1.18. And this slide shows the gradually declining numbers around January end. You can see, I don't know if you can see the cursor. Maybe I can annotate it. So in this area, you can see the numbers are really going down and becoming really small numbers here. And then within 2 months, you can see this spike, very acute spike in the number of cases. The shaded part is incomplete data, so we will not take that into account. So take the red rightmost solid bar, and that is you can see how tall that bar is, and that is very, very telling. At 15 million confirmed cases as of today and 182,000 plus deaths. Oh. Okay. Oops. 1 second, sorry. It's coming on all of the slides. Okay. Now, to provide some more background information, and I'm sure everybody has this information already, but on February 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization announced an official name for the disease that was causing the 2019 novel coronavirus outbreak, first identified in Wuhan, China, in December, end of December, as we all know. The new name of this disease is Coronavirus Disease 2019, abbreviated as COVID-19. In COVID-19, the CO stands for Corona, VI for virus, and D for disease. Formerly, this disease was referred to as 2019 novel coronavirus or 2019 nCoV. And it's a new disease caused by a novel virus that has not previously been seen in humans. And because it is a new virus, and although we are almost 2 years into it now, this second year running, scientists are still learning about its behavior in terms of its transmission, the risk, the population section at risk, and its different clinical manifestations. We all know that initially it was thought to present only as acute respiratory disease, but we are seeing many more different clinical manifestations of this disease. Although most people who have COVID-19 have mild symptoms, COVID-19 can also present as a severe illness and may even cause death. Some groups, including older adults and people who have certain underlying medical conditions such as obesity, diabetes, lung diseases, etc., are at an increased risk of severe illness. This is the total world numbers here. COVID-19 cases at 144 million, deaths at 3 million, and recovered at 122 million. But the deaths still at 3 million is really a very starkly high number. Now, in terms of establishing the relevance, I also wanted to mention about these 5 different variants that are being seen. And these are variants of concern. And the short form of that is VOCs. And there are many variants actually that are being reported, but these 5 are being considered or looked at as variants of concern because they are either causing more severe disease or their transmission rate is higher, their contagion is higher. So for those reasons, you can see 1, 2, 3, and in the last bullet you have 2. These 5 variants, and they have been found in different countries, but they are also traveling because travel has not stopped, unfortunately. So this is what I would like to establish as the context for the value that this kind of a case report brings to the table. Now, I would like to present to you the summary of the paper, and I would like to start with the author's hypothesis. This is just a summary of the abstract. The author is presenting here an RT-PCR positive case of a severe COVID-19 in a 52-year-old male with predictors suggestive of a bad prognosis. And these predictors are high measures of interleukin 6, D-dimer, ferritin, and CRP. And an 18 over 25 chest severity score, which makes it a number 6 on the IMRAD score, which is COVID-19 reporting and data system, strongly suggestive of lung changes due to SARS-CoV-2 infection and requiring oxygen support. So bad prognostic predictors, as you can see in all of these specific biomarkers that are assessed in any COVID-19 positive case to understand the severity of the disease. And I would like to actually show you one, sorry, is there any chat? Yeah, sorry, okay. Meenakshi, you can let me know if there's anything relevant that I need to sort of look
No,
at.
it's just discussion only.
Oh,
So
okay, okay.
little later.
All right. I want to show one particular chart and sorry, a figure here. This one. So this is the CORAT 6 score. You can see when it is 18 out of 25 in the chest severity score, where there are ground glass attenuation in different lobes of the lungs. So here you can see right upper lobe is on a scale of 0 to 5, it is given 3 score. Right middle lobe has been given 3 score, and this is upon the reading of CT scan of the lungs. The scoring is done based on the reading of the CT scan. And right lower lobe has a score of 4, left upper lobe 4, left lower lobe 4, a total of 18 on 25, which makes it a 6 CORAD score as per the COVID-19 database, as mentioned earlier. We will now get back to the PowerPoint. I just wanted to elaborate on that. So initially, this case was treated under ICU care at a tertiary care COVID hospital for about 14 days. The patient sought Ayurveda intervention, seeing no improvement in his condition in 2 weeks. When there was absolutely no improvement, in fact, there was declining oxygen levels and clinical symptoms were more severe. That is when the patient himself sought out Ayurveda intervention. Ayurveda intervention was given for 19 days along with standard ICU care which resulted in complete clinical recovery of the patient, supported by the normalization of the above said biomarkers, all of these D dimer, IL-6, ferritin, CRP. Oh, sorry, I already have the figure here. I forgot. And this is the author's hypothesis, and I have broken it down into 4 slides, identifying the gap. So, Ayurveda physicians often get the opportunity to intervene in cases where modern medicine has shown limitations. If not all, at least some of these cases eventually benefit from such interventions. So, these first 2 bullets we all know to be true as professionals who are part of the Ayurveda fraternity. But the gap is that very few among these successful interventions, however, are documented. This non documentation of meaningful interventions in intractable conditions is largely attributed to the unfamiliarity of Ayurveda physicians with scientific writing and meticulous record keeping. This is a well known fact. From research perspectives, all these observations may have a potential to act as strong cues demanding further exploration for their possible application or generalization. And I have used most of the author's words only. I have just paraphrased what he has written. Second part of the hypothesis of the author is, and I have in this particular slide, I will highlight uh, the establishing of the aim of the case report. COVID-19 pandemic has presented numerous such opportunities before Ayurveda physicians where novelty of the disease, because we are all at par as far as this disease is concerned. We can't say mainstream medicine has some, a standard protocol that works, um, uh, all the time. Sometimes it works. Some cases are able to recover, but there is no standard of care actually that has been able to be developed across the world. So we are kind of at par at this time for this particular disease pandemic because of its novelty. Nobody knows really for sure the exact behavior, the exact clinical manifestation. It continues to baffle scientists and the medical professionals even till date. So Ayurveda physicians are invariably treating many such cases in their individual capacities and are meeting with success in terms of, this is important and that's why I have bolded it, reduced complications, very important, improved recovery rate, again very important, and reduced hospital stay. All of these are goals we would like to achieve in this pandemic because of all of the obvious reasons, reduced cost to the healthcare system, to the country, and also the financial sector that has taken a hit due to reduced productivity, absentees will also be impacted positively. So all in all, this is what we would like to aim in terms of managing the COVID-19 pandemic. Such cases are treated either in an integrative model using Ayurveda in an add-on mode upon the insistence of the patients, or as the standalone therapy where Ayurveda has been instituted as the sole intervention modality. These are the two main scenarios. Making a recommendation. Now, this is the last part of the author's hypothesis. What does he want to recommend as through the case report? So as a response to the pandemic, Ayurvedic classical literature has been critically revisited in the context, and many novel propositions, including rephrasing the COVID-19 pathophysiology in terms of Ayurveda, has been attempted. Many clinical trials on Ayurvedic formulations and their role in SARS-CoV-2 infection are underway right now, about 150 plus, and their results are eagerly awaited. In this particular case report, the rapid clinical and biochemical correction, please take note of that, in an otherwise deteriorating medical condition is highly significant. And I agree with that. I agree with the author's hypothesis fully here. and warrants an urgent search for possibility of instituting the integrative management strategies for all those treated in an allopathic facility. This case also advocates an early institution of Ayurveda interventions in COVID 19 in order to prevent deterioration leading to complications. Again, the author is here limiting to COVID 19 positive cases management. So, one is to prevent deterioration, complications, etc. And second is active intervention, whatever the stage is. Here, the author wants to focus only on that, not on prophylaxis or post COVID. So, these are the two scenarios where the author wants to focus and recommend the future direction. Now, let's move on to the methods. This case, once again, is about a 52-year-old non-smoker male resident of Delhi. Now, here you are being informed about the city where this patient resides. So there is some information about the site of the case report, even though the caregiver is based in Lucknow, which is another city in India. Um, Average built, otherwise healthy, without any known comorbidity relevant to COVID 19, such as obesity, diabetes, etc. Initial onset of clinical symptoms were fever and flu like symptoms, such as running nose, sore throat, cough, headache on 21st October 2020. Please remember these timelines. I have converted them from the date format I have written in words so that the India and US date format does not cause confusion. So 21st October. Up till the diagnosis of COVID 19, the patient was receiving home based care, home remedies like drinking hot water, gargling, steam inhalation, analgesics for body pain, antipyretics, not mentioned in detail which ones, antihistamines, again, not mentioned which ones. In addition to this, the patient was using Ayush Kwat. This is how it has been written. He has received. So I did not understand the meaning of he has received. Probably what the author means is he was using over the counter the Ayush Kwat or decoction and Chavanprash, which is again another classical Ayurvedic formulation, as per the general recommendations of Ministry of Ayush. So basically, the patient was trying all of the OTC and the home remedies available to him. Patient was diagnosed with COVID 19 after RT-PCR test conducted on 11th November. So almost 3 weeks after first onset of symptoms. CORAD 6 score in the CT scan on 18th November, a week after the COVID positive test, strongly suggested pathological changes in the lungs. Chest severity score calculated on the basis of radiological findings was found to be 18 on 25, which was associated with a high risk of mortality. So 6 is the highest you can get on the CORAD score. And as you can imagine, it's the highest score, so it indicates high risk for mortality. Additional antibiotic, azithromycin, here some details are provided, antiviral, favipiravir, and antiplatelet, low-dose aspirin were added. Their doses or strength are not mentioned, were added upon the SARS-CoV-2 infection confirmation. Initially, there was no breathlessness, but the cough and breathlessness gradually set in, requiring a shifting of patient to DRDO, Defense Research and Development Organization COVID Hospital in New Delhi, where he was admitted in ICU on 18th November. So on 18th, his CT scan is done, probably I'm assuming in the morning, because the same day he's admitted to the hospital, as you can see, 18th November, same day. Since then, he was continuously kept on oxygen as he was not able to breathe on his own without additional oxygen support. Without oxygen support, his SpO2 was reported to be as low as 64%, dangerously low, as you can see. So he was clearly struggling by that time, and his condition was quite critical. Blood investigations also carried out on 18th November. So I think this was the sequence that 18th, he got the CT scan, he was breathless, he was admitted after the CT scan findings, and then he was started on the antibiotic, antiviral, antiplatelet, and he was also started on oxygen, and his blood was sent for investigation for checking his IL-6, CRP, D-dimer, and ferritin levels. Now, in this section, it has been mentioned this particular sentence, a high total count, WBC count, of 17,280 units was reported on 1st December, indicating steroids used in that case, in the case. So this is how it's mentioned. So this is one thing I will bring up later on. Please remember it, that this is the only place where steroids are being mentioned. There's no further detail of steroid use. So 18th November and then 1st December, about 10 days later, there is a high WBC count that's being reported. Despite being under the standard ICU care till 2nd of December, his condition did not improve much, which is again almost 2 weeks after hospitalization. At this time, in a state of hopelessness, he sought Ayurveda intervention. After a teleconsultation, he was recommended Choshist Prahari Pipali 500 milligram twice in a day, Shringara Abra Rasa, which I will refer to as SR, 125 milligram. It's a Ras Aushadhi, so very low dose is given, 1 Rati, 125 milligram twice in a day, and Amrit Bhallataka, which I'll refer to as AB, 2.5 gram twice in a day, was started. CPP and SR were started from 3rd December, and AB was started on 6th December, 3 days later. I did ask this question to the author, and he clarified that CPP and SR were procured locally, and AB he had to ship it to the client. So that is why the 3-day delay. The patient continued to be in standard ICU care as usual. This also I would recommend you remember that he was continued to be in standard ICU care, which actually has not been described anyway. The details of what was the standard ICU care have not been provided in the case study, and I will be talking about that later on. As usual with oxygen support. So that is mentioned that he was still on oxygen support. The patient reported to feel positive from the very first day of start of Ayurveda intervention. His dependency on oxygen started reducing on the following days. From 9th December, so about 7 days or a week after starting the Ayurveda treatment, he reported to sustain without oxygen support for 45 minutes, intervals, periods. He continued with the Ayurvedic intervention along with the ICU standard care. On 11th December, his RT-PCR, about 9 days after starting the treatment, his RT-PCR became negative. He still required oxygen support, but
Pratibha,
his
can I
yeah.
jump in here?
Mm-hmm.
Can you go to the previous slide?
Mm-hmm.
Not this, the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here, I couldn't find anywhere in the paper what is this high total count of 17,000? What was he referring to?
So, yeah, I asked him and he said WBCs, and it's there
WBC.
in the, yeah. And it's there in the, okay, I think this is a good time to show the, the lab findings. Just
okay.
1 second.
Total
I'll show you.
leukocyte count. Okay.
Yeah, total leukocyte count. So this is the, if you see total count, 7, do you see below hemoglobin?
Yes, got it.
Yeah, and this is just before starting the Ayurvedic intervention. So I will be actually coming back to this chart in a little bit. Yeah, but that part is something to note because there is a little bit of an issue with that. And on 12th December, his blood investigations were carried out, which is almost 10 days after starting the treatment. and most of his prognostic indicators were found to be in normal range. Same day onward, he did not require any oxygen support. On 14 December, he was shifted from ICU to HDU, which is a high dependency care unit. He continued the standard care and also the Ayurveda medications. He continued to improve on following days and finally discharged from the hospital on 21st December. So another week he was kept and he was discharged. Although the patient was on simultaneous standard ICU and HDU care for 1 month, he largely attributed his improvements to Ayurveda interventions. So this is self-reported, which was started from 2nd December and continued till his discharge um, on 21st, which is about 19 days. So, main discussion points. The case presented here reports complete clinical recovery along with reversal of most biomarkers related to the disease severity within 19 days of initiation of Ayurveda intervention along with standard ICU and HDU care. This is remarkable and needs the utmost attention. This is as per the author himself. And he followed the Vyadhi Pratinika approach of treatment, which is disease-specific approach. And these three medicines were given, which are classically recommended in the diseases of the lungs. I will not linger here too long because I really want to be able to have an interactive session. But this is going to be available for you to read later in the YouTube recording. Um, so there is little background and context to the drug selection and what is their classical recommendation. I did try to reach to him to ask which brands he used, but he refrained. He said he did not want to appear to be endorsing any brands. Uh, yeah, so this is general information. Um, so he also wants to make the point here, failure of standard recommendation of Ayurveda immune enhanced therapy. He means the Ayush Kadha, etc., Chavanprash, etc., which prevented the disease from anchoring and progressing to severity. He wants to make a note of that here. He has mentioned that because everything was done on tele consultation, he was able to assess the Rogi Bala and the Vyadhi Bala, which were both Pravara, means both were strong. So the classical assessment, obviously, which was in person, would have been much better, could not be achieved. He makes a note of that. Um, and although not utilized fully, Ayurveda continues to show promise of effectiveness. More clinical trials are underway. So these are some of the discussion points that the author mentions. Observation made through such single case reports, however, are also significant for the possibility of getting converted into robust evidences following the if they can be followed by systematic clinical trials. So although valuable, such case reports are inherently deficient in precise details because they are retrospective in nature. And there are two main limitations. One is that the outcomes are not achieved, that are not achieved are never reported. So limitations are there because the unsuccessful cases are not reported, only successful ones are. So there is not, proper balanced reporting of the outcomes. Second limitation is that clear reasoning of intervention and its effects are always difficult to interpret in the presence of other variables and confounding factors. This is to be appreciated, this honesty on the author's part to mention this. This case report should essentially be viewed in light of these limitations. So he's agreeing to these limitations. And the conclusions by the author, severe COVID-19 associated with respiratory distress corresponding to the high chest severity score and raised specific biomarkers has such as these has invariably been associated with poor outcomes. But despite that, most other studies have revealed that the mortality rate for COVID-19 positive critically ill patients receiving ICU care can be very high. So mortality rate for these parameters to be high can be strongly predictive of mortality in these cases. In India, although the mortality among critically ill COVID-19 patients with respiratory failure is reported to be slightly lower, it is expected to be of much higher value if reported correctly. And he has given references for that. In this background, improved outcome in such a critically ill patient or patients, reducing complications, reduced stay in hospitals and recovery should be the main points of focus. An integrated strategy for hospitalized patients, which uses Ayurvedic management strategies, is expected to improve the outcome and minimize risk. This case report highlights that despite prolonged hospitalization in an ICU, Ayurvedic intervention can prevent deterioration, leading to complications and enable complete recovery. So, complications can be prevented and full recovery can be achieved. I will talk about the strengths of the paper now. I personally thought it was painstakingly written with lot of details, lot of context. It's thoroughly written. It's well written. Language of writing is professional, objective, and scientific. It's not flowery, which often we see in paper writings in India. Background and relevance of the case study are established clearly and carefully, includes key relevant data with additional details where needed. Pre and post intervention data, both qualitative as well as quantitative, have been well documented and shared in great detail to further establish the hypothesis of the author. Citations and references are ample and provided where necessary. Informed consent was obtained from the patient. Conflict of interest declaration has been done. Now, I want to quickly show you all some figures here. Oh, yeah, I'm almost there. So one thing I want to appreciate about this paper is this timeline, which I thought is always very, very helpful to have. So you can see very clearly, 11th of November, you can see from getting positive with the RT-PCR test to starting medicines. Here you can see the progression. So very clear, I would say, outline timeline has been shared, which I really appreciated. So this is one thing, and then I want to also now go over. Before I go on to the weaknesses, I want to, if everybody could come on video and audio, do you think this paper has any weaknesses at all? What do you think about the quality of this case report? Any one or two people, and then I want to go into the next slide. What did you think about this paper? Anybody would like to share any thoughts?
Yeah, I think there were, I mean, there are two deficiencies as far as I can see. One is that there's no data in the patient on antibody responses, for example. I mean, if the patient, for example, let's say, had an immune response that cleared his infection, we have no way of knowing whether that has happened or not. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that the table on the blood markers is actually quite informative, but there are gaps in that on the timeline. And I don't know whether we'll discuss that in a little bit more detail, because I think if you look at that table data, maybe raising a few questions.
Yes, thank you, Camilo. I will be lingering on the table. I'll be going back to that.
Okay.
So hopefully, yeah. Anybody else would like to share? What are your impressions of this paper, prima facie? What does it come across as? Ram, Nami, anybody?
I think it's a good one in the sense it gives a foothold for people to follow further, but at the same time there are some deficiencies in the sense that, for example, now if you're looking at deficiencies, then the chest score was, he highlighted a lot about the chest score, but I would have been very happy to see if after post Ayurvedic intervention, what was the chest score? That he didn't provide for some reason. Maybe they didn't do it, or I'm not sure. I mean, I would have expected that to be a very good diagnostic index about whether the intervention was successful or not. The second thing is, it would have been nice to follow the patient for maybe at least 2 or 3 weeks to see the benefits were sustained. And if he came down completely from those whatever illnesses, whatever changes he had, that could have provided us because one of the main blood factors there, if you see in the table, hemoglobin did not change. So I would have loved to see him follow the patient for at least 14 days, continuing the Ayurvedic treatment at home, and then seeing if that levels of hemoglobin changed or not. That is one thing. And then the final thing is, there may be some criticism about whether it could have been possible that maybe the standard care that he was receiving was not optimal, and when he brought on to the Ayurvedic intervention, maybe that kick-started the recovery process, but maybe that is not the sole thing. Maybe the combination of standard care plus the Ayurvedic treatment both together helped. So here is an example of where when we call about one case study versus a case study or a study where you have multiple people or too many people, that's the kind of studies where you'll see where they can delineate the standard of care and have a patient population with just receiving the Ayurvedic treatment. That would tell you about the promise, whether those the Ayurvedic treatment holds a good promise or not. Here it's hard to say whether it's a combination of the two that helped, even if the Ayurvedic intervention kick-started the process. So that's a little difficult to assess. So that was my main take on this. But other than that, I think it's a good start to the whole therapeutic process.
Yeah, I think this is one of the one of the only studies where an ICU admitted patient received an Ayurvedic intervention. So that way, it's very interesting and new, and can lead to some pilot studies, etc. So yes, exactly right. I think because time is less, I would have loved to hear more from all of you, but here are my outline of weaknesses of the paper. I think for me, as I read the paper more thoroughly, I realized there was only one sentence in the whole case study that mentions the steroid use. Nowhere else there is any clarity, because steroid on its own can also improve the clinical symptoms. So to me, that was really it. I felt almost sad to see that there were no details except that one sentence, and I reached out to the author and I could not receive details about this. When was it started? What was the dose? When was it discontinued? Was it discontinued? So to me, that took away a lot of what could have been attributed to the Ayurvedic intervention. That was the saddest part for me. And even with the standard of care, I reached out to the author and I was not able to he said that he was not aware of whether the standard of care was continued during the Ayurvedic intervention. So that was, again, that brings down the causality that we can ascribe to the Ayurvedic intervention. So I definitely was a little bit disappointed there. Aside of the blood markers and COVID-19 negative test, this case report does not mention symptom profile, clinical symptoms. Was he still coughing? Was he still congested? me, the dysfunction. I will not spend time in pointing out where, because am I visible? Am I audible? Showing internet.
Yes, you
Hello?
are audible and you are visible now.
Okay.
Sound is much better now.
Okay. Did I freeze earlier? Oh, okay, sorry. There are some typos, grammatical and other errors, and some biomarkers have not been commented upon. I'll go and now show you all of those. It would have been good to attach appendices with the ingredients, details of the formulations and their classic indications, which was not done. So overall critique, but I want to go to the paper, but this is the last slide. An excellent case report which documents all relevant data in great detail. Outcomes are supported by biomarkers. I do not want to take away from the dramatic change in the biomarkers. That is, I think, one of the big strengths of before and after biomarkers of relevance. The IL-6, the CRP, the CRP, etc. Sorry, IL-6, CRP, and ferritin levels, those biomarkers which are critical did show a dramatic change.
Yeah.
Author discloses limitations also. He could have done better in areas mentioned under weaknesses. So with that, I want to quickly just show you one part, then I want to open it up for discussion. Please stay if you can. I just want to show you this very quickly. First of all, in this section, one place in one place he says the medicines were started on 3rd December. I don't know if you have got that. Started on 3rd December. Anybody, can you speak and just confirm to me? Can you see this highlighted part?
Yeah.
Okay. And everywhere else it's been reported as second. So this is obviously a proofreading mistake, I'm sure. Now, in the biomarkers, I asked him about the ferritin levels that went up, actually. The ferritin levels have not gone down, they have gone up. And LDH levels have not been reported on, which are also high. So there were areas where there's no commentary or not sufficient commentary. There were some other biomarkers also that were high or not in the normal range, and they were not commented upon. So
Yeah.
I think with that, I would like to invite discussion.
Yeah. Can I say one thing about the biomarkers, which is, I think the reason that that data is weak is because if you look at that table 2, then, I mean, he's talking about the markers that are in red, the D dimer, the CRP, the IL-6, and the ferritin. And he's given you the values, he's given us the values on on the 18th of November, and then the final values after the Ayurvedic treatment on the 12th. But he hasn't given us any values
in
on the 1st
between.
of December.
You're right.
When the treatment was starting. So you could argue that if you look at D dimer, for example,
Yeah.
973 going down to 225, that before you started the intervention, it might have been 500. All
Yes.
those may have been coming down.
Yes.
We don't know because you don't have the value of that.
Yes.
And the reason that I'm concerned about that a little bit is because if you look further up at the top of the table, values that he has on platelets, which is one of the other characteristics with COVID, where the platelets seem to disappear, the low values on the 18th, but the high values on the 1st of December.
They are. Yeah.
actually come back down
Yeah.
again. But and the lymphocytes
Mm-hmm.
actually begin to go up at,
Mm.
at that value. So I,
True.
I think it's difficult to
Mm.
to make the conclusion that he's making that it's the Ayurvedic intervention because you don't have the values of the key markers on the 1st of December
Mm.
when
Yeah,
when
if he had,
Yeah.
if
before
he,
the treatment started.
yeah,
Yes.
I wish if he had mentioned whether the standard of care was simultaneously happening along with the Ayurvedic treatment. That
Yes.
Yes.
would clearly tell us whether this was Ayurvedic
No, he
treatment for
has
those
mentioned that,
patients.
Ram. Ram, he has mentioned that throughout the study, but he has not elaborated anywhere. What does that mean?
Right. I mean, because if the standard of care required for them to continue to use the antibiotics and then the steroids, then the whole
Exactly.
the,
The
the
whole
entire
study
yeah
falls
the
on its
entire
face.
veracity of Ayurvedic intervention falls apart. You see, so
Yeah. That those, I mean, I started off with a lot of excitement. I think Meenakshi remembers I was saying I really want to present on this study. It looks great. But when you start reading, and I think that's the purpose of the journal club, that you're able to kind of critically read a study.
and
Dr.
I mean,
Nami, Dr.
even
Vanda,
though
do you want to come
we
on
can
video?
speculate, but the thing is, being in the hospital until then, I wonder how much I wonder if the doctors put him away from the standard care, they would have continued that as well. I mean, I'm just speculating.
Mhm.
Suppose if he was at home, then probably he could have given just the Ayurvedic treatment. But the fact that he was still in the hospital tells me that maybe he was receiving both the treatments simultaneously.
Exactly. And that's my worry because steroids alone can, improve the
Mask the
outcomes
whole right.
drastically. So,
And the other thing with regard to that is the treatment with aspirin, which is
mhm.
an antiplatelet agent, started before the Ayurvedic interventions. I presume because standard of care carried on that the patient was taking aspirin continuously in
Mm.
that period. And it is, I don't know how closely you're following the COVID issue, but the question about coagulation and the involvement of platelets is
Mm.
emerging to be important now. I mean, if you look
Yes.
at these complications with the vaccines, it gets the very strange type of clotting
Mm.
where the platelets seem to be activated very early and begin to disappear. And that seems to be the same kind of coagulopathy that you get in COVID itself.
Mm.
So uh, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the clinical trials on aspirin come out at.
Are you a physician, Camilo?
No, I'm an immunobiologist,
Oh, okay.
but I've been following this extremely closely because the question about acute respiratory distress,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think fits because in the disease, the first markers you begin to see are D-dimer elevation levels.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens before IL-6 is seen. And I think, and what is clear is that the coagulopathy
Mm-hmm.
is a primary issue because D-dimer definitely correlates with mortality rates.
Mm.
So
Maybe also the LDH levels
yeah,
also.
there's something going on in this
Mm-hmm.
disease in with the virus inducing some kind of coagulopathy of some sort, which we don't quite understand.
Yeah.
So
And
so
that fits much better with all the other bits of evidence, I think.
Would you like to share your email ID in the chat, Camilo?
Um, yeah, I can do that.
so
All right.
Pratibha, a
Ah.
question to you.
Mm-hmm.
This Ayurvedic treatment that he gives to the patient,
Mm-hmm.
those three combinations that he gives,
Mm-hmm.
is that unique to COVID or is that the standard of care for any viral?
No, no. He has given the logic that because lungs were involved, and these formulations are classically mentioned for lung diseases.
Respiratory conditions.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. That's what he has mentioned. So, yeah. But yeah, thank you. Any other final comments, Dr. Vanna, Dr. Meenakshi? Would you like to share something? I don't know if Nami is.
You are on mute, Dr. Vandana.
It happens. So in its directive, Ayush since beginning has not given recommendations for any kind of rasaushadhis. All over India, whatever the Ayurvedic doctors are practicing, most of the reportings are about kashtaushadhis. And there is no standard protocol for respiratory disorders in Ayurvedic therapeutics that they should be used. Physicians, based on their practice or presenting symptoms, make their own combinations. So when rasaushadhis are used, it would be not a uniform reporting also for the purpose of research or for the intervention in COVID treatment or recovery, or for such patients who are in, like this case, who are in ICU.
Yeah, but I think in a case report, one can have that liberty of, reporting as is.
Yes, a
Whatever they
case
have
report
chosen.
can be done, but like
Yeah.
Dr. Ram said in the beginning, that study should have a certain number of patients. So that would be
Yeah.
very difficult with rasaushadhi.
See, I would say what would be the opposite of this, that he does not report this case. I would say at least there is some benefit in having,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, at least we see something, some changes. And, if I was in his place, I would try to get more information about what else, because again, it boils down to the limitations, confounding factors, right? Because what was the acting, if if there are five, six other things that he was taking under the standard of care, because that's been mentioned several times. He was continuing standard of care. What does it mean?
Plus, you get a good start, right? I mean, if you're
So
planning
unless
a
we
And
know
it
that,
gives lots of hope, because in current situation in India, the Ayurvedic intervention, especially with rasaushadhis, it can save many lives.
yeah, if you're
There
planning
is
a
no
if you're
hope.
planning a if you're
People are
planning a
losing life like anything.
right, if you're planning a clinical trial, then this study helps you, because then you can plan on having one of these formulations or all three formulations in the clinical trial, along with some others that you plan to try, since these have already been shown to have something there.
Yeah, definitely. I think Dr. Namita wants to say something. Yeah. Hi, you are on mute.
Hi.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you Pratibha ji for I missed the earlier part of the presentation, so I'm going to go back and look at it. But I just wanted to actually ask you and ask the team if there are any kind of any reasonably good clinical studies that you have come across coming from Ayush in India uh, for for COVID-19, anything that you feel that, okay, this is a decently good study that can inform us. Can any of you please share?
I'm working on that with two of our team members.
Okay.
So there was a
I think
We will soon have a COVID-19. Is it me or Ram?
no, it is
You.
Okay. Ram, you want to say something?
yeah. So there was a article that came about a few months ago. It was from Ram Manohar's group, and that was a nice extensive paper. I'll try to put it out. I'll send it to.
So you're talking about the
No, not
ashwagandha?
ashwagandha. This was a similar kind of a thing that Sanjeev has mentioned in his paper. So this was also, when they were asked to put in a protocol, and
Oh, Jyoti Joshi.
I don't remember the first author's name, but
Yeah.
it was from Ram Manohar's group, And I thought that
Yeah.
was a good one. That was a good one.
Okay, thank you for sharing, Dr.
I
Rao.
have
Can
that
you,
paper if you want, Nami. I
yeah,
can send you.
you can share that. Okay, that would be great. Where can we find these Ayurveda related COVID resources for research? Can
There are
we?
few in PubMed also. I have couple of papers. I will share.
They're all
No, I mean,
scattered,
I
so
was
we
just
are trying to put them together in
Yeah.
one place.
okay. So
In
we'll
car.
have them. No, just as a conversation also. So like we can keep each other updated. Maybe.
No, it's all scattered. You can't find all in one place.
I know, that's why I'm saying that if we can at CAR, if there can be a little COVID group or
Yeah,
something,
that's what we are trying to do. Yeah.
that would be awesome. That would be
Thank
great. Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So thank you, Camilo, for joining. Really interesting that you have joined from UK. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Ram, thank you for joining.
Absolutely. Pleasure. Always.
Anyway.